Let's get right to our Triple J panel this afternoon. In Washington, we're joined live by MSNBC contributor Jonathan Capehart, who's of the Washington Post. Democratic strategist Julian Epstein also joins us from the nation's capital. And I'm delighted to say that here in New York, in the studio, we have Republican strategist Juliana Glover. Julian, I want to start with you. Given your considered expertise in matters of law, as you watch these events being played out, is there the slightest reason to believe that this amounts to anything short of a witch hunt?
No, this has been a fishing expedition. The committee won't win this fight with Holder. As you point out, Martin, I used to be the staff director of that committee. I was involved in many of these fights. They never win fights when they're on expedition, when they're on these fishing expeditions. Guns walking was a program that started under the Bush administration. Holder actually stopped the program. He's the one who called for an investigation. He reassigned many of the agents that were involved in the gun walking effort on Fast and Furious. The committee's asked for 80,000 documents. Many of them relate to ongoing law enforcement investigations. Committees never get law enforcement investigatory material. And Holder made an extraordinary step of giving them information about internal deliberations, offering it on the condition that the subpoena from Chairman Issa would be satisfied. And Issa was not ready to take yes for an answer. And it was an extraordinary accommodation that Issa said no to. This has been a fishing expedition on a theory that Holder was somehow secretly commandeering this gun walking and then covering it up. It's a theory that there's never been any evidence for, and the committee will, at the end of the day, will lose, and they'll lose badly on this.
OK, John, well, I want to play you something from Representative Pelosi, who discussed the contempt vote before reporters today. Take a listen to this, John.
Don't forget, they're going after Eric Holder because he is supporting measures to overturn these voter suppression initiatives in the states. This is no accident. It is no coincidence. It is a plan on the part of Republicans.
John, is that mere conspiracy theory, or do you think there's some sympathy for her view?
Sure. I'm sure there's some sympathy for her view among progressives and liberals and folks in the Democratic Party who are indeed worried about voter suppression efforts in Florida and other states. But to draw the parallel, to draw a connection between voter suppression efforts and what Darrell Issa is doing on that committee, I do think sort of strays into the realm of conspiracy theory. But that doesn't make the concern that the House Minority Leader is expressing a wrong concern to have.
Right. What's your reaction to what Nancy Pelosi said, Juliana?
Well, my reaction right off the top is that, I believe that there's a previous governor or a current governor who tried to vote a couple years ago who couldn't vote because he was listed as dead on the Florida voter rolls. So, in this day and age, when there is so much information available electronically, to match those rolls with what the Social Security Information Association has available, with what's generally available on public sites, shouldn't really be that hard. And I think that really what's the most important thing we can do is ensure that voter rolls are as accurate as they possibly can be. And this is something we've been going over in the U.S. for decades now. We're now at a time where technologically this should no longer be a fight.
So why?
This is a canard, Juliana. You know it very well. Yes, we have sophisticated technology to allow us to match voter rolls, but the voter suppression, the voter ID laws are attempting to cure a problem that doesn't exist. Voter suppression has been, in-person voter fraud rather, has been studied extensively. There is no problem of in-person voter fraud, and the efforts to demand things like voter IDs, particularly in places where DMVs are located hundreds of miles away from different communities and they're only open 5 hours a week. This is an effort, and this has been documented widely, to disenfranchise as many as 20 million people, the vast majority of them African American and Hispanic. I will also note that you didn't respond to any of the silliness that's going on at the Government Reform Committee with respect to the Fast and Furious investigation, the fact that they won't win it. And Martin, my theory on it is not the voter suppression connection, as Jonathan pointed out. My theory is that Dan Issa has produced almost nothing as the chairman of that oversight committee. Henry Waxman was incredibly prodigious when he was the chairman.
Right.
He produced a lot of useful investigatory material. Issa's come up with nothing. Solindra's been empty, an empty bucket. This will turn out to be an empty bucket, and at the end of the day, he's going to have nothing but bagels to show.
Well, maybe. Do you want to respond to Julian?
Yeah, Julian, that is really a lot of hyperbole. Quite frankly, to claim executive privilege on a matter at the Justice Department would suggest that this goes all the way up to the president.
No, it doesn't.
Communication.
You're wrong about that.
How can you possibly say that?
Can I just say, Juliana, you're wrong as a matter of law.
Cover-up. And, no, it wouldn't be that difficult for the Holder folks to just go in and have a frank conversation, show the documents in a closed room, and walk out with those documents.
Okay.
This is really a matter of intransience on the DOJ.
With all due respect, they've provided them 7,000 documents. They've testified 11 times. They've provided over a dozen witnesses. The material that the committee's been asking for, 80,000 pages, a large part of that involves things like 302 FBI investigations, grand jury material, a whole host of things that committees never get. The committee actually conceded that when it pared its request of 80,000 documents down to 1,300. And the 1,300 now that it wants to get it have nothing to actually do with the gun-walking operation. What they're simply trying to look at is whether there was this alleged cover-up on this bizarre theory that Holder was somehow trying to mastermind this to get tougher gun laws. It's a bizarre, paranoid theory.
Okay, but the bizarre paranoid theory continues because Speaker Boehner has also addressed the contempt vote today. He stopped short of calling for the Attorney General's resignation, but certainly suggested underhand behaviour by the White House. Take a listen.
And why the White House would invoke executive privilege over Department of Justice documents raises, I think, very serious questions.
John, is it fair to equate the use of executive privilege with guilt?
Is that question for me?
Yes,
I hope
John.
so, because the answer. I think it's a bit of a stretch here. And one thing that I agree with everything that Julian said in arguing with Juliana about this point. But one thing that wasn't talked about is the precedent this would set in terms of internal communications between Justice Department officials that right now, when you send an email, Martin, to your staff, you are going under the assumption that those communications are between the two of you. Imagine if you go in a future administration to work in the Justice Department and have to worry that even the most minute thing you say could end up in a court proceeding. That's going to have a chilling effect on how you do your job, how the Attorney General does his or her job, how folks who are underneath him or her do their job. This is the sort of thing that I think the administration is trying to guard against. This has nothing to do, I think, with a cover-up or it goes all the way up to the White House. It's about maintaining a privilege that I think should be there.
Indeed.
And can I just tell you as a matter of law very quickly, Martin?
You've got 10 seconds.
The first time a president did this was George Bush 41. I was the staff director of the committee that was involved in the investigation, involved Department of Defense documents. Bush declared it. We were not able to get the documents. The only way a committee overcomes an executive privilege is if they've got a very compelling case that it's necessary for their legislative responsibility or a crime is involved. That is not the case here. This is why the committee will lose.
But people died, a crime involved. I mean, that's a clear bar we've cleared.
Well, indeed, maybe. Jonathan Capehart, Juliana Glover, and Julian Epstein, thank you very much.